Hey, this is at best mediocre, where we are tryhards at video games and training, but really we are just having fun getting beat up. Today we want to take a look at Sworn. It is a up to I guess like 1 to 4 player co-op roguelike uh game that's set in I guess based around like the King Arthur round table thing. Um basically Basically, it's kind of, I guess, like everyone's been saying it is essentially Hades, but co-op. So if you've been playing that at all, I guess, like, if you play any roguelike stuff, right, it's not super easy, but it is pretty fun in the way that it challenges you. So we'll get into the gameplay in a little bit. It is developed by Windwall Games, okay? So that's the interesting part is that there are the developers at Windwall Games come from a pretty diverse background. There are ones from that used to work at Riot, Blizzard, and whatnot, and it's published by Team 17 Digital. It first became available in early February of 2025. So there was early access on Steam, but the full version wasn't launched until September, like late September. Um, and so right now it's available on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch is coming later on, so that's not there yet. I could see it going on Switch, but I mean the gameplay isn't that complicated, so it should be doable on Switch. I guess they just have to work out some of the kinks of it, which we'll get into later too, because it definitely has its share of issues. Okay, so visually, I would say, I mean, first of all, the storyline is about like you're playing essentially one of, I guess, like a knight or something like that. There are 4 different classes, right? So basically, just something about like corrupted King Arthur legend, and you're trying to beat them up. You're the good guys trying to kill the bad guys, or something along that line. The end boss is essentially King Arthur gone mad. um, so the way it works is you basically play as what's called a soul forged knight, one of the 4 classes available, and you are swearing fealty to Fey Lords. And then when you do that, they will give you a blessing which boosts your ability to fight. Visually, it's kind of got this like dark fantasy art style. Um, it's not super refined, which in a way I think like contributes to its charm. The idea is that look, it essentially plays like Hades, but it allows you to play with friends, which to me, any game is just better when you can play with other people because look, especially games where it's challenging and you get crushed, it's just funnier when I don't know about you guys, but my friends tend to like we like to laugh at each other when stupid things happen and we do dumb things. Of course, we'll celebrate the wins too, but it's just funny when you do something crazy and your friends see you do it and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing, dude?" um Okay, so basically the idea is that you can build pretty much any way you like. So there's a bunch of these Fey Lords, and you know, there's ones that there's ones that focus more on crit. There's ones that focus on damage buff. There's ones that do a dot. There's ones that debuff. Um, kind of it's like the weakness one, etc. Right? Okay, so let's actually get into the gameplay of it. Okay, essentially you start out, you pick a hero. Well, okay, when you first load in, okay, you immediately load into the lowest level of the game, which in and of itself is already not easy, even on easy mode. You start out as a squire, and you start out with one character, which essentially is their like warrior slash melee, uh, warrior fighter class type. Okay, and then you get one weapon. All right. So as you begin the run, you'll load in and essentially you'll start fighting, and you fight through these chambers. Okay, so in each chamber there's a certain number of mobs and certain things. There's like traps on the ground that can set off and hurt you. The mobs do different things, and the point of it is to learn what the mobs do and what the mechanics of the each chamber is. And then eventually you fight through some chambers, you get to pick up some currency, and then you get to spend the currency either in during the run. You get to spend the gold coins, and then after the run you get other currencies that you can spend to kind of help build out your character and build out your abilities, etc. in the game. Okay. Um, so during the run, you fight through these chambers, and then you'll run into bosses, etc. And then if you once you get through to the end, you can either there's like these gemstones that you could get along the way to allow you to continue after you beat King Arthur, or the corrupt King Arthur or something. Um, and then you end up fighting other bosses and whatnot. And we got through King Arthur, and then we're in the later, like the bonus rounds and whatnot, and then we got crushed by, I believe it was like, was it like a Medusa or something? She was doing some crazy abilities that we just weren't expecting. So even in the lowest difficulty level, it can kind of destroy you. And then as you go up in difficulty level, basically the everything else stays the same. Okay, the I think the mobs might hit a little harder. I can't tell, but essentially, I'm not actually. I think it's like the mobs hit hard either way, even in the lowest level. So like that's the thing with roguelike games, is that it's like pretty much designed to kill you. Um, so it's definitely challenging. And then as you go up in difficulty, the chambers will have what's called corruptions, and um, essentially it's a debuff to the map itself. So what'll happen is like something might explode on the ground, something might attack you following you around, something might force you. There's one that I hated, which is you have to stay in this stupid fucking circle, and you have to fight in the circle, or else you get what's called stagger. And with the stagger, you essentially, I guess, like you can't really move very well or something. And so it's just kind of annoying, and I ended up just like, the way to play that is realistically to just stay out of the circle and just play with the debuff. That just makes it a little bit more consistent and one less thing to worry about, because there are mobs that are throwing things at you, and things explode and all kinds of things. So yeah, so that's as you go up in difficulty, you'll get like one level of difficulty, I think you get one corruption. You go up another level of difficulty, there's two corruptions. So realistically, the game build itself is not that complex, right? You have your character, you have ability blessings, you have like graphic displays of these blessings, essentially like different colorings with a little bit of a graphical highlight going on, and then the room gets blessed, gets debuffed, and they'll just stack on the debuff, right? So instead of like new abilities and things that you have to deal with, it's like same old stuff, just more of it. Okay. Um, so as you get started, you start with a vigilante who is essentially like warrior slash rogue type character. And then what's interesting is that it forces you to play through all of the characters in order to unlock the last ones. And then in order to unlock weapons and abilities, you have to play that character. You have to play through a certain number of chambers in order to unlock certain abilities. Each character has four weapons. You get the first one for free, and then they have four abilities, and you get the first one for free. And then, of course, unlocking the rest of them. And then throughout the chamber, as the difficulty level goes up, you're able to get what's called potions. The potions can either help you get certain blessings or allow you to do more damage or get better movement, etc. And there's like limitations to how many times. I think like each potion you can kind of use as far as like choosing which blessing to get. You can use it once per run. Um, and then the additional potions, I think some of them have like two or three uses. But ultimately, you don't get a ton of help, okay? And the hard part about these games is there's not a whole lot of healing mechanics that's like built into the gameplay itself. So health is hard to come by, damage is not. So you get hit, you take damage, you lose health, and you kind of a lot of times you just sit there, right? You might lose like 20 health at a time, but you gain like you could lose like I mean realistically you could get crushed in a single chamber, depending on what was going on at the time and how much. And sometimes like I swear some of these things just snowball, right? So you take damage from one thing and it kind of like fucks with your head, and then all of a sudden you're just taking damage from everything. um and then like when you go through the next chamber, there's things where you can build into where you gain a little bit of health as you go into each chamber. But if you think about like losing 20, 30 health, let's say you lose like 30 health in a boss fight, 40 health in a boss fight, and then you go into the next chamber and you can only heal like 5, which I believe is the talent. Yeah, so it's just really easy to die in the game. But as with any roguelike game, it's kind of the situation. So if you've played it before, you're pretty much used to it, okay? Um, there are apparently over 200 unique blessings of the different Fey Lords. So I won't go into that exactly, but essentially the thing is about you're able to build around four characters, each with four different weapons. You can upgrade the weapons a little bit through the blacksmith, and then you're basically allowed to have as many different builds as you can imagine, I guess. It is limited by which blessings you get. So every time, so as you clear a chamber, right, you might get the next chamber will show a door. So the first one, you you pretty much always get the flag thing where you get to choose from one of the two Fey Lord's blessings. So that's always the first chamber. When you go in there, you can pop the potion that you want to get a specific blessing, or what you can do is, for the most part, like if you're first starting out, you just get the two blessings and you have to pick from one of them. Okay, so there's one guy that's like the earth guy that does the stagger, which slowly stuns the mob. Once it gets staggered enough, it'll get stunned for like a few seconds, where you could just full on DPS. And it does work on bosses, but it just takes time to build up that stagger. Um, I've seen people build into that specifically in order to stun pretty much everything, which is pretty cool. But you do have to kind of, it'll depend also on like your play style and your weapon and whatnot, right? So certain characters have melee weapons. Pretty much every character has melee weapons, okay? Um, and once you go in, you pick your blessing and then you go to the next one, and then there's these anvils. If you pick the anvils, then through the door you beat the chamber, and once you beat the chamber, the blessing or whatnot is an anvil that drops, and it's something that buffs without a specific Fey Lord blessing. So it might be something that buffs your movement, it might be something that buffs your light attack or heavy attack, etc. There's not a whole lot that's like there's not a whole lot of different buttons to push. You have a light attack, you have a heavy attack, you have a spell, and then you have your potion button, which you rarely press because it's not a healing potion. Um, and then it's just about moving out of the way of things that can kill you. Um, So yeah, with the vigilante, you have like a sword, you have daggers, you have um these like what look like, I don't know what they're called. They're kind of like these boomerangs that you throw out and bring back, which looks to be one of the strongest ones. Um, and then the rook, you have, yeah, with every class you pretty much have some ranged weapon and some melee range weapons. So like longer range versus shorter range, and it just depends on how you like to play. Um, I will say that having played with a few different, so I played through all of the different characters and some of their basic weapons, and then a couple of the unlocked weapons, and melee weapon is just really difficult to play. Um, a lot of the characters, so there's characters that charge at you. There's characters that slam directly in front of them within like a couple of feet. There's characters that throw things, uh, and then there's characters that explode in a puddle of mess. Um, so the issue with melee characters is obviously you're in very close range, and so if you think about any character, any enemy mobs that throw things, um, if you are at range, right, they throw something, there's a travel time for the projectile, and so you have time to move. If you are in melee range, when that projectile exits the enemy mob, if you are not already out of the way, you're immediately hit. There's just less reaction time to go to kind of play with. So there's less wiggle room, less chance for a mistake, um, and so ultimately, I mean, you do get, I guess, like sort of a faster attack speed if you are in melee range, because most of the melee weapons, I think there's like melee weapons would just either, if there are larger weapons, they take longer, but um, the smaller weapons give you faster attack speed, right? So that way you can build up whatever blessings that you have. Especially if you're doing stagger, you kind of want to do something that like can hit more frequently to be able to build that up. Um, but yeah, the melee is just really difficult to play. So it just kind of depends. I think if you like dedicate enough time to it and get pretty used to the animations, which are not crazy long, they'll be like, hey, yeah, and that's it. And so if you miss the hey, yeah, while everything else is going on, the ground is exploding, there's things flying at you from other directions, there's traps on the ground. If you get speed boosts, that's the other thing, is that if you're used to running a certain speed and dashing a certain distance, and all of a sudden you get a speed boost. Sometimes that speed boost can be more detrimental than helpful. I will say it took me a while. I usually like to get movement speed just because I don't like to be hindered in a game. But as soon as you get increased movement speed, you have to deal with the fact that you move differently. And so you have to adjust to that. Takes a little bit and then you get used to it, which is good. But there are other blessings that increase movement speed during the runs, and that will kind of fuck me up at least. It takes a minute to get used to, and that, that would be okay in any other game, but because when you take damage and you lose health, um, it's not easy to get it back. Okay, you earn coins. There's like little bits of health boosters here and there that can help. You can build into healing, like I think 5 or 10 health as you go through the chambers, or something that gives you health when you pick up this certain purple currency that to use for talent points. But even still, it's like 10 at a time. It's not a lot. So once you build into whatever it is, then you like go through and you deal with the different bosses, and as the bosses do some crazy shit, it's just I've played the melee one, and I definitely will say, like, within the difference of one run, I will see a huge difference in terms of the amount of damage I take when I play melee versus range. Is it just me? It could be, like some people are just really good at these types of games, or they've played it a lot, so they're kind of used to it and know exactly how to deal with all that stuff. But as the amount of shit happens on your screen, um, it just gets a lot more difficult. It definitely is pretty fun, at least for a while. And if you like dealing with the challenges and stuff, um, it's a good time sink to get into, and I feel like it can definitely at least kind of entertain you for like 2 to 3 weeks solid, and then it might die down a little bit just because of how repetitive the gameplay is. Again, you're going through the same chambers over and over and over again. If you die, then you start all over, or you finish the run, you start all over, and it's the same exact thing over and over again, which is okay if you're trying to get to the last boss, right? And you're struggling to do that, you're figuring out how to build, and you're figuring out how to spend gold coins, um, because when you get to the shops and whatnot, the group shop is one purchase only, which means that if there's 3 of you or 4 of you, then only one of you can pick up one of the things that's available to purchase. So there's usually like, let's say 6 or 7, 6 to 8. What is it, 6 blessings, 8 blessings available for you to purchase, and sometimes it could be something that boosts an existing ability. Sometimes it's a new ability. There's ones that boost your health, or there's currency that you can buy that either goes to talent point and whatnot. We'll get into that in a bit. But essentially, the gameplay is pretty repetitive. So once you've beaten the boss, then your only option is to, well, there's the bonus rounds where you can keep playing, but again, the gameplay is the same thing. You're not really dealing with, you're not really like going through different maps or exploring anything. There's really not a whole lot to see. The bonus rounds have bonus mobs that do different things. Still, again, avoid damage, kill mobs, um, and then once you beat the whole thing, then you start all over again, and you go back into the room and you start all over again to then go through again with a higher difficulty level. So once you've done that a few times, I feel like unless you're super dedicated to wanting to beat the entire game all the way through, I don't know that you're really going to want to keep going through over and over again. Okay, so outside of that, all right, the game itself is pretty fun, but we do have a few issues that are, I guess sometimes it could be problematic. There's the disconnect issues, which is problematic, and then I think I think outside of the repetitive run, it is fun to play with different people, but ultimately, again, the runs are pretty much rinse and repeat, so it's not exactly anything too crazy. You should probably keep your friend group. Like we played for like 2 weeks and we're pretty good with it. And we're like working on it, but the tough part is like, okay, so two of us had been playing for like a week and change, right? On and off, not crazy. We're playing other games at the same time, so you just play a little bit. You're like, okay, cool. We're building up. We're figuring out a little bit, and then as we're moving on to second difficulty level, we have another friend that jumps on and wants to play. And that's the tough part, is that if you've been playing it, you're already getting a little bit used to some of the mechanics and things that you have to deal with. And you're playing at a higher difficulty level, so you're like used to seeing all of this crap. And the thing is, they jumped on for like one game. We ran like we ran through some of it like one time, right, until we died, right at the beginning when we started playing. And then we're playing at a difficulty level that's like more, just there's more stuff going on, and he jumps in and he's just getting wrecked. And that's just not fun. So if you have one team member that's really struggling, there's no way that, you're going to want to run that same thing over and over again. One, because like you're not just going to leave them dead and move on, right? You're going to have to res them. If you res them, you either have to spend health or gold, and it's expensive. Okay, like it's pretty brutal how much it penalizes you for dying. And so, like, your friend that's struggling, one, they don't want to feel like they're holding you back, right? And two, they're just not having fun getting wrecked repeatedly. And so we ended up dropping it down to a lower difficulty level just so that we can all kind of at least play, which worked a little bit better. But again, like as you're trying to push higher difficulty level because the you've already done the previous one and like it is a repetitive game, then the novelty of it kind of wears off. And then as you're struggling to get through, then you're like helping your buddy, you're resing them in order for them to like gain the experience to actually play through. But realistically, the game is so repetitive. Um, each room is tiny. There's no exploration. There's no additional interactions really. You're just like kill, buy stuff, move on. And then the real issue is the disconnect. So with pretty much any other co-op game, right? If you disconnect, like we play Rivals, we Call of Duty, we're playing Helldivers, which has its own disconnect issues and has its own crashing issues. So we won't get into that. But for the most part, most games have a disconnect protection, which means that when you disconnect due to either your own internet issues or the game having issues or the game servers having issues, um, you disconnect and then you reconnect and it asks you usually if you want to rejoin the existing game, right? So especially for a PvE game, it's not even PvP where like you can't wait around and they're gonna have to fill your spot. So like in some of the other games you disconnect, sometimes you can reconnect and sometimes it just kicks you out and fills it with another person. This game has none of that. So if you disconnect, and then on top of that, okay, if you disconnect, one, you cannot reconnect, and two, the only way to join a group is if they are essentially in the lobby. Right? So if they are in the main room where you are buying talent points, buying weapons, upgrading weapons, blessings, the different abilities and whatnot. You can upgrade you can make potions, change the way the character look, etc. But there's this like one main room that if you are not in the main room, your friend cannot join you. Which means if you start a run, if you're in the middle of a run, you're like, hey, come play with us, and you are like 15 chambers deep, 20 chambers deep, your friend cannot join you. So you have to back out of the existing run. You do get to keep the currency that you've gotten through that, but you have to start all over again. So what does that mean if somebody disconnects? Well, when they disconnect, they cannot join you again. Which means if anybody in the group disconnects and you want to keep playing together, the whole group has to start from the beginning. You have to start the run all over again. And if you disconnect 2 or 3 times, that pretty much kills it for the night. And that's been happening a lot. I've seen it. I've seen some posts about it too, where people are. There're just a lot of people disconnecting, and I will say that that's one of the killers too. Is that we would have made more progress, but I've literally disconnected like 3 or 4 times in one night, and that kind of kills it because one, look, aside from just like progress, etc. The game itself, like I said, you get there's like what, five different five, six, whatever different Phalors that give different types of blessings, right? And so if you like building a certain way, okay, um, if you like building into let's say crit or backstab or like At one point, I was running crit and venom. Okay. If you want to build crit and venom, you have to hopefully get those blessings to drop. One, you have to get the right Lords, right? And yes, there's a mechanic later on in the game as you build into it to re-roll what you get. So you can re-roll which Lord you get. You can do the potion to force a certain Lord to show up to start. You can only use it once, right? Once per run. Um, and then you can re-roll the blessing that actually show up. But there's no guarantee what you're gonna get. So you can re-roll and get the same bullshit again. You can re-roll and get shittier things. But essentially, look, I've had runs where I'm like, okay, we're going. No, that's not the Lord I wanted. I can't re-roll anymore. I re-roll twice, nothing happens. I keep getting the wrong one. Okay, cool. So I just have to build into whatever it is that they give me, and then as the game continues, I keep getting shitty ones that I don't want, and I just have to play through to the best of my ability with whatever I'm getting. All right. Okay, great. So we get the run. I'm struggling, which means that I'm not being as helpful. Okay. We get to a certain point, and whether we get through, we don't. We start the run all over again. And guess what? The next one, I get the perfect rolls. Okay, I get the perfect Lord, and I get the perfect blessings that I want. And my build is solid. I am crushing mobs, and I'm having a great time. And I disconnect. Or a friend is having a great time, and they have the perfect build, and I disconnect. Guess what? The whole team has to just say, "Ah, shit. Let's back out and start all over again." Now, if that happens 2 or 3 times, that's enough to kind of kill the vibe. Okay? And then you're like, okay, do we keep going? Okay. One more DC and that's it. And maybe you get through, maybe you don't. Even if you get through, like here's the thing, roguelike games take a lot of focus, which means that it's mentally draining, which means that more than a few runs, you're pretty much done, okay? And when it cancels you out, you're having a good run and something slows you down, something just like starts you all over again, it's gonna affect you. At least it affects me. And so that's a huge issue. There's no disconnect protection, so as soon as you DC, everybody has to start all over again. Um, that has been quite a painful problem. Um, One of the other things is that co-op balancing, which means when it comes to these, look, the map stays the same size, right? The mobs are just as many mobs, just as many abilities. We've definitely noticed that, like, when you're playing 1 to 2 player, everything's pretty nice and clean, right? It's your character. You're pretty much the only thing moving that way. All the mobs move the way they move. And so, yes, you have more mobs to deal with by yourself, but that screen space, the only things that's taking up screen real estate is the mobs, the mechanics, and your character. When it becomes 2 people, it's still somewhat okay to deal with. There have been times where I look at a character and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna get hit, and I look and it's not even me, right? When it gets to 3 players, that definitely starts having an impact, and the screen is just really chaotic. We haven't played with 4 people yet, but I can guarantee you it's gonna become a mess. And so at the second tier of difficulty, when the rooms themselves start having corruption abilities, where like there's like lightning or tornado or like crazy circles happening, there's stuff where it removes certain abilities, slows down your movement, etc. All of the debuffs just start having a greater impact because the screen just becomes really chaotic. Um, and then when it comes to the different builds, there are a ton of options, but I will say, like I said, look, if you are building melee, good luck. Because if you are not like perfect at moving out of the way, the game will punish you. And as you go on, because it's like it's chamber after chamber, the more you screw up one time, you're going to get punished for the rest of the way until you're able to get your way back. And the thing is, that's going to be tough, you know? Um, and so while there are plenty of different builds that you could do, I really wish that that melee builds have more damage protection against them, um, which is really tough. I have built into evade, which stops one, well, potentially stops you from getting damage, but it's a chance that melee is just too difficult to build. There's definitely the range weapons. Some of the weapons definitely feel weapons and abilities feel more meta than other. Um, so realistically, the variety that seems to be available really isn't. And then I think some of the, I mean, the length of it, the runs feel pretty long. So once you're in, you're in. You do get to kind of take breaks whenever you want because it's per room. So once you're done with the room, you can kind of hang out in there for a minute if people need to grab drinks. But still, the runs are pretty long. Mm, that could get annoying long term. It just gets boring. Like the gameplay is pretty repetitive. The run is the same run. It's not like there's different pads that you can go, right? You did like do this one is versus this guy, that one is versus that one. It's one quest the whole way through on repeat with more shit. So you're doing the same thing over and over again. And as you get better at it, then you increase difficulty and it gets more difficult again. You're doing the same thing, you're just struggling more, and then you do the same thing again and you choose to struggle more. I'm not sure how much more fun it could be. Uh, and it's not that funny when people die because there's not a whole lot of like there's times where you're like, oh shit, I watched you run into that trap or like run into that mob. But because the recovery is so difficult, it's really not that funny when somebody's struggling. Um, yeah. So yeah, all in all, the game is pretty fun. Definitely worth playing ish if that's something that you like. It's also a nice break from all the team shooters. It's a nice break from all the battle royales and all the just like PvP FPS type of thing. If you've been playing a lot of Call of Duty, it's a nice little break. But is it worth the money? Well, here's the thing. Okay, the disconnect itself alone is a killer because there's nothing more frustrating than getting disconnected and having to start all over again. There's absolutely zero ways to recover. And not only that, but when you're playing with a group of people to have no disconnect protection, that means that if I DC twice and my friend DCs twice and our other friend DCs once, that's five. Five times that you start all over again. That's six of the same fucking run. The same chambers on repeat. Same bosses. Not much changes. So eventually you're just like, okay, this is fucking lame. Let's go play something else. That alone is a huge issue. If you are going to make a co-op game, put disconnect protection in. Otherwise, it's just really annoying. One of the other issues I ran into is lag, and so like it's not entirely like lag where the input is like not as obvious as some of the other games, but and there's no latency check for it. Like there's no number on the screen that tells you, right? So like if I'm playing like one of the battle royales, whatever, one of the PvP games, you can get it to show the performance numbers, and so you can see if your frame rates are dropping, you can see if your latency is having issues, and that way you at least know what the fuck is going on. But there are times where I'm like I dash through an ability and I take damage. And I'm like, I know that I've dashed through that same ability at that same time and have not taken damage. And there's something there where you're like, okay, I'm hitting the buttons, it's happening on my screen, but on the server, like the communication with the server is slightly delayed and it's causing some issues. And yes, you can play around that, but if I could just see that number on my screen, that way I know exactly how much I'm dealing with, right? If I'm normally at like 20 ms and all of a sudden I'm at 60 ms, that's going to make a little bit of a difference. And that at least I know to make an adjustment for. If I have to just wild guess, first of all, you think you're crazy for a little bit, and then you're just guessing how much of a difference you need to make up. And again, you take a lot of damage in the game, and it's really difficult to recover because there's not a whole lot of healing mechanics in there. And so you end up just getting punished. All right, so I think the final thought on it is, look, is it fun? It could be. I think it's fun for like a week or two. If it wasn't for the disconnect, I'd say it would be fun for like 3 to 4 weeks until you hit a plateau. And I think that's a real thing because again, repetitive grind. Um, you go through it and you're gonna hit a skill cap where as good as like however good you and your friends are, you're just gonna hit somewhere where you can play and then eventually you just can't beat it. Um, so is it fun? It's fun for a little while. It's fun as you're learning and improving and are overcoming. Eventually, you're not going to be able to improve, overcome anymore, and you're just going to get stuck. And because it's repetitive, you're just going to move on to something else. Okay. Um, and then the other issue is the disconnect issue is obviously a thing. I think the UI is definitely a problem because they're pretty much every other game I've played before, when you mouse over an ability or when you're first starting out, whatever, there's something that explains to you what something does. With this, you get currency. First of all, a lot of the currency spent is not cheap, okay? You might earn like 20 or 30 at a time. And in order to unlock a weapon, it's like 180. And you're like, okay, I will spend 180 on this item if it's going to help me or it's something that I actually want to try. But there's zero explanation what any of the weapons do, what any of the classes do, or what any of the abilities do. You just walk up, it shows you the name, it shows like this icon, and then there's no explanation. So you're like, do I want to spend the money to unlock this weapon when I don't know what it does? You have no clue. Like, are these daggers just regular daggers? Are they ranged, right? If you like playing ranged and you don't want to play melee, the weapon may or may not be. And some are more obvious than others. I think at one point my friend played the rook or something, and it had a cannon, and he's like, "Oh, cool! This you can shoot this gun. It's a close range gun." So yeah, and it's slow as fuck. So you're like, oh cool, it does all this damage, right? You aim it, you're like, okay, cool, it's doing this thing, and then you're like, fuck, I have to be within a certain range to shoot it, and then it's slow as fuck, and then it slows you down, and everything in this game punishes you. So then it's not really playable, and even though you think it's cool, eventually it's not. And the thing is, you spent money on it because there's no indication of how it works, what it does. There's no like range indicator. There's no explanation whatsoever. There's no description. So the UI is kind of wonky, okay? Um there was one thing. Jeez, I'm like um okay, the other thing too is I mean, I think that one of the issues is like I don't know about the pricing for it. All right, it's a decent game, but it does one like everybody compares it to Hades, right? They're like, "Oh my God, it's the exact same game." So that in and of itself is like, okay, I'm sure like building it is not as easy. Like it's not just as easy as copy and pasting, obviously, right? But the idea of it isn't that crazy. Um, So the game right now, I was playing it on Xbox. Well, the Xbox app on PC. It seems like movement would be easier with a controller. Um, but I mean, because it's simple, it's only a few buttons. It's probably easier on a controller, but I did play it on PC. Um, I played it on Game Pass, which is cool, but Game Pass has upped their monthly subscription fee, and to me, it's like kind of no longer worth it, which I'm gonna talk about in a separate podcast. Um, this I checked it on Steam. It is $40 on Steam, and currently it's on sale for 24. Um, I think the game, in terms of if I'm likely to buy it, I mean, look, I think some people will buy pretty much anything, and $40 isn't crazy if you're used to buying games. Given the repetitive nature and the limited variety within the game, I don't know that it's a $40 game. I know it's co-op, but like, look, if you are gonna have that many server issues and disconnect issues with zero protection, it's not worth $40. If it didn't have that, I think probably 35, and you'd have to really like show me the gameplay. Um, would be nice to have a free version, like free trial version. It's just there's so many games out there that without trials for some of these games, it's like, are you ready to just kind of watch a video or read some description and see like, okay, cool, another roguelike game. Here's $40. It's multiplayer. Well, one, you'd have to like kind of convince your friends to play or like jump in with randos. Um, on sale for 24. Yeah, I'd say like for $24, probably. Um, but because of the way Steam games work, a lot of games go on crazy sale and it's like super cool. Realistically, I think if the game was like 30, that's probably a better price. For all the disconnects, I think 25. Without the disconnects, probably 30, 35 max. Um, Really, I think 30 is just a lack of variety in the gameplay. Just on repeat. Like you're building the same chambers. The chambers change slightly, but all the mechanics are pretty much the same. They're just different shaped rooms, so it's the same code for each. It's like three different sections or something, so like four different sections. So the graphics aren't like a huge variety. All the maps are set. It's not exactly like different maps either. It's not like the chambers change each time you load in. It's the same exact thing over and over and over again. So in terms of the priciness of development, I don't feel like that is there. Like that, I don't feel like it's a $40 game. Um, I feel like it wants to be. Like if it were to do dynamic maps, um, that would probably bump it up like 5, 7, maybe even 10 if there was like more talent tree to play with too. I think that would make it a $40 game. One, no more disconnect bullshit. Okay, if you're gonna look, disconnects happen. Okay, it's not exactly like this is news to anybody who games nowadays, right? Like if you play any sort of online game, you know you're gonna get disconnected at one point or another. To get disconnected 3 times a night and then get your progress reset every single time, that's ridiculous. Do not charge me $40 for me to like get disconnected and have to start all over time after time after time. And I get it, it's on Game Pass, but whenever people say it's like, oh, it's free on Game Pass, it's not free on Game Pass. You are paying a subscription to have access to these games, but realistically, you are paying a subscription so that other people can have access to games that you don't play. Which it's pretty much how like any of the online streaming platforms work, right? Like everybody is paying for the same pool of things that you pull little bits from. So even though you have access to an entire library, no one person is sitting there watching or listening to the entire library the entire time. So you are paying for other people's, you're paying for your own downtime, or you're paying for your own downtime to pay for other people's uptime. At the same time, you are no longer paying for individual pieces in that library to have access to it permanently. You just no longer have permanent access to it, right? So same situation there. Um, so yeah, I'd say if it was a $25 game that goes on sale for like 12, yeah, for sure I'd buy it. It's good enough for that. It's fun enough. The disconnects are annoying as fuck. I would still play it. I would probably still play it for like, look, I played it for like a week and a half. I would still play it for probably another 2.5 weeks. I say that as in like I'd play it for 2 weeks and get really fucking sick of getting disconnected. The struggle with building and like trying to play through over and over again and failing over and over again, and then eventually like if other friends join in and then waiting for their progress and just like experiencing it with other people could be fun, but still like you're every time you have a new person join in you kind of have to drop back the difficulty for them to get used to it, get the experience and get the get the knowledge of the game. And so after like what 2.5 weeks, I'm pretty much gonna be over it, especially with the DCs. Without the disconnects, I'd probably play for like another similarly, except I'd be more willing to jump on as other people went on and just like play it for variety. But because you keep getting disconnected, that really is a huge deal. So yeah, outside of that, game is pretty good. For 25 bucks, I don't like I thought about it. I kind of wanted to just because I have friends that are playing it, so that's always a way to like get people to buy stuff is that if your friends are playing it, you're kind of gonna want to play it too. But is it really worth it right now? 25 bucks? I'm not I'm leaning more and more away from buying this on Steam. I've let my Game Pass expire for now. I might get it on and off if there's a game that I really want to play that I don't want to buy. So maybe it'll be worth getting, but like, dude, my another month of Game Pass is gonna be like $5 cheaper than just buying this game outright, which I can still play as a solo player. Um, oh yeah, and one last issue with it is that if you run through, because I had beaten it with a friend, um, if you beat it with a friend, so here's the thing, okay? We beat the King Arthur part with a friend, but we had the additional bonus rounds and we didn't beat the additional bonus rounds. So here's the little bit of a caveat. So I think what happens is if you beat it with a group, when you try to play it by yourself, because I didn't beat it by myself solo, that it didn't count or something. And so after beating it with a friend, like normally my friend beats it on Squire, and so he's able to play it now in the higher level, in a second difficulty level, which is called Night. Um, but basically, you're able to play on level 2, and so we beat it together. But when I loaded into the game myself, I wasn't able to play it on Night. And so it seems to be that if you beat it as a group, you don't get to play it on a higher difficulty level solo. But I can't tell if it's like, hey, if you beat it with 2 people, and you're playing with 3 people, you can't go to a higher difficulty level. But that doesn't seem to make sense because after my friend beat it one time by himself, when we joined him, we were able to play the higher difficulty level before we beat the first level. So I don't know. I think it's like it seems to just be a bug, honestly. I think it's just bugged out that like if you didn't beat it by yourself, you don't get to play it at a higher difficulty level. Even though realistically, if you're playing with friends, generally, you're like I'm playing with them and I want to maybe try out some builds by myself at the higher difficulty level so I can like practice a little bit without them, right? Um, Apparently that's not an option. So honestly, I think like if that is the intention, I think it's really dumb. If it's not the intention, then it's just a bug that I don't think they've recognized yet, but I haven't checked on the forums for that. So you can let me know if that's something that you already know about. If you're playing it and you've experienced the same thing, or if you checked it out and read something online about it, and that's like the intended way that the game was built. Um, but yeah, if you've tried the game, if you have any thoughts about it, uh, or if you have any questions about like different builds and stuff, I do personally prefer. Um, I've been playing the mage a lot with the dagger and backstab crit or venom crit. Both seem to be pretty good. Um, my friend swears by the backstab, but you know he also plays very differently than I do, so and he's playing vigilante with the boomerang things. So yeah, if you have any thoughts or questions or whatnot, drop a line and we'll try to get back to you. If you have any tips too, on how to beat certain levels, because we are pretty much at the second level and we're like not crazy about it because the map is so chaotic that it's like difficult to see where your character is, where the fuck my mouse is, first of all, like that keeps getting lost. Um, and yeah, so if you have any tips or tricks or have any questions and whatnot, drop a line. But otherwise, thanks for sticking around and hanging out. See you guys next week.